name is Greg Flairman. I'm the principal consultant for our support and managed services practice. Thank you for joining us today for virtual learning support. So we'll take, I think we've got about 45 minutes here. We'll take you through a few different things and help you better understand what we're seeing in the market, as well as what's going on for services and some of the strategies that we're seeing both with existing clients, as well as discussions that we're having with potential new clients to assist them as they look at what this new normal and this new support mechanism will look like for them going forward. So I'll walk you through a couple of different areas. I'll take you through the operational agility aspects of services and what to think about from that perspective. We'll also talk about the service transition and how do you make that transition from your current support model into maybe something different in order to support the new demands that are out there. And then we'll also talk about some of the benefits of making changes to your services to help not only yourselves and balancing your responsibilities and demands, along with the demands of your users and the end user community. So, okay. So just a quick overview on who PDS is and what we do if you're not familiar with us. So we've been around for over 30 years, and this is really our various areas of expertise. We have our partner product, which is something that we've been doing for quite some time, is really what's core to our business in assisting clients with the selection of products and then also finding the appropriate services that we can help with the implementation of those products, as well as supplement capabilities that you have within your organization. And then the third that we've got is some expertise in some development around specific software platforms and the use in specific use cases for certain industries or segments. So again, been around for 30 years, over 300 people. What I really wanted to focus on that'll be relevant to our conversation today is 16 years of operating in a help desk. So this is something that we've definitely got a firm understanding of, and that we've been doing for quite some time now, and really have a strong alignment and continually evolve in our capabilities in this space, and have found ways that we can help a lot of organizations with their support maturity and evolving that. So 120 onshore analysts, and when I say onshore, they're predominantly in the Madison, Wisconsin area. Obviously, in today's world and our operational needs, folks are working remotely, but all onshore, not the use of any nearshore resources or offshore resources. So that presents a different level of benefit to a lot of organizations as well. And one of the other things that I wanted to share with you too is our employee retention has been fantastic. We've really, in the help desk space, because it tends to be a starting point for a lot of folks in their careers, we see a lot of turnover in that particular area, just because people are getting the education and the skills that they need starting out in their careers and then advancing. We've been really fortunate to be able to find people that really love what they're doing and continue to stay with us and do that type of work and or evolve through the organization. And I'll talk a little bit more about that and some of the structure that we have in place to be able to facilitate that. So, and I will say that we're also very fortunate in the fact that even in these tough economic times, we're continuing to hire and grow our team. And actually, those numbers have increased even from that 25. We're actually, I think, closer to 40 now that we've brought on in 2020 to help aid the needs of clients. So, and the key thing for you to also understand too is that we're here 24/7. So that 120 resources is here 24/7 to cover the clock for any support needs that may arise. Okay. So let's talk about some of the operational agility.
And Greg,
yes.
Greg, as you get started here too, I just want to make sure let everybody know that if you have questions along the way, there's a toolbar on the bottom. to hit with a little question mark, and you can submit a question there, and we'll monitor that and respond. Thanks.
Great. Excellent. Thanks, John. I forgot about that. Thank you. So please, if there's questions that arise throughout the course of the material, happy to answer those. All right. So one of the things we'll do is I'll just walk you through these general areas. We'll talk about some of the challenges that we face today. We'll also talk about how we can align that support, as well as we'll also do a comparison between a couple of different approaches to support. And then we'll talk about some of the technologies, as well as how we can engage with you on that, and ultimately service levels. Okay. So as we all know, obviously we're in a unique situation and we're facing unique times. There's a lot of questions that a lot of people have, both personally, professionally, that we're really trying to understand what is this new normal, or what does the future look like for us, in how we operate as professionals, as well as how do businesses operate, how do industries operate. This is a opportunity, or it's a time for the status quo to really get challenged, which can be stressful, but can also yield some really amazing things. And I think we'll see that in the coming months and years. So one of the things that obviously this impacts is the situation that we're talking about today with virtual learning, and the transition from the conventional learning that was in person and in classrooms and on campuses to a very disconnected or virtual kind of experience that spans different time frames, that introduces some technical elements that weren't maybe present previously. There's a lot of different things that happen there. Along with that, there's other aspects of the business that are impacted. How do budgets look? What do those changes mean for the organization? What do those mean for parents or students? How do these things all start to come together? Obviously, challenging times for everyone. So to hopefully help answer some of those questions, we'll walk through some strategies on how to develop an aligned support service. So we originally started, as I mentioned, 16 years ago, really focused on a general IT help desk and how to be 24/7 available to help clients with general IT needs, whether that was with end user devices, or whether that was with data center technologies, and how to provide support for those ongoing. We then started to do some work with one of our clients at the time that was very focused, that was in the healthcare space and had a more specific application need. They were implementing Epic and were deploying the use of the patient portal MyChart product that introduced a different type of support that we had not typically done. That we stepped into that opportunity as far as understanding what that application was and how that worked, and what some of the capabilities that we had native to the help desk, and how we evolved that. And that has been something that's been an ongoing area of growth for us. And we're seeing the same things now in the education space. If you look at and break down the underlying capabilities of what's required to operate a help desk in a very reactive support capacity, some of these other areas where you're now then customizing those troubleshooting and documentation skills and applying those to specific industries, that's a natural extension. So what we'll focus on and what we'll talk about today with regard to the education help desk is really around how do we help assist you with student access issues, as well as some of the basic navigation associated with the student information systems, and even some connectivity troubleshooting. A lot of what we've learned from past experience has been that those are really the kind of the core three areas that external users, such as students and parents, may struggle with, especially if they're not using those environments or those tool sets on a regular basis. They may go periods of time without using those tools, or have some challenges at times with accessing the systems. Okay. All right. So now let's dig a little bit deeper into these two support services. And so within that education help desk, there's really kind of two sides to how we can intervene and assist with support needs. One is really, as I mentioned, very externally focused in that learning portal space, and that's what we'll predominantly talk about today is this area. But then the other one would be the internal support. So the difference there is that with external support, you're really focused on more of a consumer or customer service oriented experience. Not to say that you're not customer service oriented when you're talking internal support, but it tends to be just a little bit different focus, because with an internal support, you're really focused more on how do you provide a technical depth and breadth versus a usability and an experience oriented engagement. So the way that we've kind of just split these two capabilities apart is that we really focus on, in the external, we're focusing on the students and the parents, versus the internal is more associated or facilitated with assisting teachers and faculty. The other differences here, as you'll notice, with external support, because it's more consumer oriented, it's really important for us to provide the people, the process, and the tools as a cohesive solution, versus in an internal support capacity, a lot of times we're working with an internal IT team to support internal end users. So in those scenarios, we may do more of a hybrid kind of a scenario where it's our resources, but we may be aligned more to a client's processes or even using a client's ticketing system. So a couple of differences there. But the other thing that is obviously a focus area for us is minimizing downtime, whether that's to enable the students and parents to maximize their learning, or whether that's for the teachers and faculty to be able to focus on their instruction and their responsibilities to deliver the lessons. So again, another difference between these two is really that access and functionality assistance versus a deeper technical troubleshooting. And then in both of those, there's still efforts that are being done to create tickets and do the right documentation from a best practices support perspective. Both of them are also a consumption-based pricing. The other reason that we do that is that we really find that because there is a lot of volatility in support, it is reactive versus, say, proactive efforts. We don't know how many calls or how many emails or how many chats may come in. So we want to be very mindful of that, that a client is only paying for what they're using versus paying for, say, a block of hours or an FTE kind of model. This just becomes a little bit more cost effective and more economical for organizations. So, and we do have monthly minimum requirements, just because there is some responsibility that and planning that we need to do from a resource planning perspective. We do need to account for an expected volume and make sure that obviously that we have the right staffing levels to be able to support that volume level for a client. So that's what the monthly minimum requirement is. And then there is an onboarding effort. And we'll talk a little bit more about the onboarding effort when I get into the service transition section. Okay. John, any questions that have come in?
Nope, so far we're doing good.
Okay, great. All right, so let's talk a little bit more about the technology. So what we see in how we're working with clients today and what that looks like from a technologies perspective is that predominantly the student information system is obviously the main interaction point for both students as well as for parents to help understand what instruction they need to work on and what the course outlines look like. So these are just a few of the systems that we're engaging with and working with as we work with clients on how to best support students and parents. The other area is obviously the classroom suite, and the Google Classroom space is the predominant tool set that's being used out there. So that's where we've applied our efforts. So the other things that I wanted to take you through is different engagement levels. One of the other benefits to working with an organization like PDS from a supplemental perspective or from a partnership perspective is that it doesn't have to be an all or nothing kind of proposition or situation. It can be one where you can outsource to us during, say, the daytime hours. Maybe you've got a team that either you do or don't have a team of folks that are supporting supporting students or parents today, that you just need to outsource that during the daytime, and maybe you're not going to offer any after hours or weekend support. That's one way that we can help and assist. Another is to, as I mentioned, maybe you have a team that is covering the daytime hours, and you just need assistance because now in our unconventional existences, you're seeing more support that's coming in evenings and on weekends as families try to balance their schedules between career and work responsibilities and also teaching and instruction and assisting students with their learning plans. So, and then the other part of that is obviously supplementing weekends. So again, we're starting to see more and more that the conventional time frame of 8 to 5, Monday through Friday, or a more traditional school day is definitely changing. Okay.
Greg, one question is
Sure.
Do these the 4 that are listed on here represent the only ones that PDS will support?
Those are the ones that we're most familiar with currently. What I would say is that the capabilities and the functionality, obviously, of student information systems does vary, and I would say that we would be open to looking at other tools and supporting other tools. It's really just a matter of us understanding what's that interface look like and how do the functions that are done in those from a password resets or accessibility capabilities, how do those differ from the tools that we're already familiar with or that we're working with. Okay. All right. So the other thing that I wanted to mention too from an engagement, outsourcing completely obviously is kind of one way of handling that. So you can completely turn that over to us versus, say, doing a supplemental kind of situation. But I wanted to just walk you through those engagement levels so that you can understand that there's a number of different ways that we can partner with an IT organization or with an IT team to provide the best support that your students and parents would need. Okay. Or supporting obviously those teachers and faculty too. So the other part of that is the engagement channels. So again, a lot of organizations may be doing one of these, may be doing multiple of these, but a lot of times what we're able to do is bring maybe a new channel that hasn't been considered for making engagement and support possible, whether that's voice, email, or chat. Chat seems to be the one that is maybe a less prevalent. People have been doing voice for a very long time, obviously, and email is great. The challenges with email, though, are because it's a kind of an open-ended or unstructured format, you can get someone that says, I can't do this, and there's more that needs to be done to really investigate what that issue is and resolve that issue for someone. That unfortunately leads itself back to kind of this ping pong effect of emails back and forth and isn't the most timely way to provide support. So what we found is that more and more people are shifting to using chat as a replacement for email, just because it's more real time, like voice is obviously, and but yet it still gives people a little bit of flexibility, especially folks that maybe English isn't a first language for them. That can also be a nice relief point for them, is to be able to do chat. because then they can take a little bit more time to construct what they want to say or how they want to communicate. So, and then
Greg, another question just came
yeah.
in just regarding specific support for a learning management system called Canvas, which I think somewhat is answered by your previous question, just in that the answer is yes. You know, we follow pretty strict workflow processes and how we do this, and it's really about building the right knowledge base to provide the support. And again, two different things that we're talking about. One would be for simple login and navigation, and other would be application support. I know you'll touch on that a little bit more here as well.
Yep, you're absolutely right, John. That would be something that we can easily take a look at, that application, the Canvas application, and there are, like I say, when I was looking at some of these just to share with this group is there. I did not realize that there's hundreds of student information systems out there in varying degrees. So, but again, what I recognize is that the core functionality for all of those systems boils down to a few core capabilities, and so those may be slightly different from application platform to application platform, but the general functionality is the same. So we can work through that. Okay. So the next thing I wanted to cover, along the lines of, we talked about those channels and email, voice, and chat as channels for engagement. But I wanted to also share with you our service levels. So these are some of the details that we do, and these service levels are based on industry standards. So these are all things that we align to. There's an organization called the Help Desk Institute. There's also operational frameworks out there like ITIL, the IT information, the Information Technology Infrastructure Library is the ITIL operational framework, and that is another one that we align to. But I would say for this particular measure, we really look to the Help Desk Institute. And so they work with a number of different help desk organizations across the country as well as globally, both for service providers like ourselves, as well as for individual institutions that are providing support in a one-to-one capacity. So we've come up with these service levels based on those best practices, and we find these to be very much in line with the service levels that most organizations are delivering. There's some that are maybe not at this level. There's others that may be exceeding this level. Again, that's something that we can talk through as we start to look and plan with you. So we can go beyond these SLAs. It's just something that we need to plan for and would have some impact on how we would structure that solution for you. Okay. So we'll move into service transition and what that looks like in these particular areas. I'll take you through the onboarding process. I'll walk through some of those dashboards that we have available to clients to be able to provide more of a governance and an ongoing compliance kind of capabilities for you, and then also what's a go live engagement look like, and how does that relationship work moving forward. Okay, so typically this is a 4 to 8 week onboarding effort, and so I'll walk you through those phases, but the reason that is some of the questions that have come up around knowledge management and others. Those are really important elements. So the first phase to our onboarding is really that content gathering and really understanding and defining some clear support boundaries. What does that look like? How do we define? So we refer to our support matrix as something where we want to be very clear and concise with an organization on what are the things that we would support. We put those in a white list. Those are very clearly defined as, hey, those are things that we openly understand, know, have experience in, not a problem for us to take that support. There'll be things that'll be in that gray area where we're not quite sure either organization could support those, and we'll want to obviously get clarity on those before we'd go live. And then there's things that we would put in a blacklist that would be something that we would not want to, or whether there's a couple of reasons why we wouldn't support that. One, there might be access related requirements. So we may need to have a certain level of security access to be able to perform that particular activity, and that's something that from a compliance perspective isn't realistic. Maybe there's some institutional knowledge that we need to have that we would take a while for us to acquire. It doesn't mean that we couldn't acquire it over time. It's just something that initially we're not going to focus on. So those are some of the things that we do in this content gathering phase, is really to understand what's that scope look like, how do we define those support boundaries, and really define the roles and responsibilities so everybody knows what to expect. Next big piece is that knowledge management. So this is where we'll take a lot of time to review knowledge that you may already have created, that exists today, that you're using on an ongoing basis to provide support. A lot of times what we find is, as we work with organizations, is that this knowledge is there, but it's institutional knowledge, right? I refer to it as tribal knowledge. It's something that someone has that they've really gained or understood, or from just doing, a very practical kind of knowledge base. Those are the kinds of things that, obviously, as part of our onboarding, we need to gather those and get those into documented information so that we can reference that. And so obviously, as a larger team, I mentioned 120 resources. Any one of those resources could be able to take that phone call, email, or chat and be able to provide the kind of support that's necessary. So by documenting this really helps to scale the capabilities. And it's a great benefit to you as an organization, because again, it's something that maybe it may have been on the list to get through and enhance your knowledge management, your documentation. You just haven't had time to do it, right? So this kind of gives you an opportunity to really focus in and do that as part of moving or transitioning that support over to us or to a partner. So the other part of this is some of that content alignment, right? So as we go through that process, we're going to have some questions, and we're going to want to make sure that we really understand that. And there's various check-ins throughout that to make sure that we've got that content aligned and that we really understand how that aligns to that support matrix that we laid out earlier. All right. Next is the evaluation and approval. And again, throughout the course of the 4 to 8 weeks, we'll look at where do we stand, and are we in a good go, no go kind of situation, and what are some of those milestones. So that's a key component of this. Oh, the other thing I wanted to point out too, around that 4 to 8 weeks, what really dictates that is that knowledge management section, and how much documentation do you already have defined. That'll make a big difference on what does that timeline look like. The other one is access rights. A lot of times for organizations to be able to set up the accounts for our analysts to be able to do work inside of the student information system, obviously accounts would need to get created, and that can sometimes be a process that slows down progress. So those are two of the bigger factors in that timeline. I also realized too that we're less than a month away from the start of school. So there are some things that we understand, and there are some ways, as I mentioned earlier, for us to engage with you, that we can do a crawl, walk, run kind of a scenario where we could work with you to really better understand what does that support need to look like, and what does that look like in a initial capacity versus, say, a longer term capacity. So the last phase of this onboarding process is obviously we'll do a lot of testing and make sure that we've got all of the right resources and access aligned. So that way, on that go live date, when we do that actual cutover and we take that first call or first email, we know that we're going to be successful in supporting that. Okay. All right. So here's a couple of examples. So what we do is we have a portal that's available for our clients to be able to log in, and they're able to access some of the dashboards that you see here. This is again is one of those areas that is a key benefit for a lot of clients is that they may not have the time or energy, or even have had the opportunity to build out some of these dashboards and some of this detail. And what that does is it then enables you and empowers you to be able to make some better operational decisions, because you've got information that you can rely on from various tools and from the work that we're doing on your behalf. So we find that this is something that clients really appreciate and are able to accelerate their decision making and some of their maturity with their offerings and their support. Okay, so next section we'll talk about is the post go live. And so once we've gone through that service transition and onboarded a client, really now it gets into what does that cadence look like, and how often do we engage with you? How often are we reviewing some of the information that I showed on the dashboards? How do we do this in an ongoing capacity so that we're really looking at more of a continuous service improvement, and how do we get better and better with each passing day, week, month? So one of the things that we do is we assign what we refer to as a client service manager. And that person is really an operational liaison, I guess is probably the best way to describe them. They become kind of that point person for you as an organization calling in and looking for assistance or some additional information. Maybe there's a call recording that you would like to have access to and listen to. That's where you would work with that CSM, submit that request. They would obtain that recording for you and then be able to get that back to you so that you can review that. Maybe you have some questions on knowledge base articles and what steps are in a knowledge base article that we would be following, or a call greeting needs to be changed. Those are all things that you would work with a CSM. So, and there's various, again, as I mentioned, various cadences for that. There's weekly, monthly, and then we also have some business reviews that we can do that are a little bit more strategically oriented. Obviously all based on the services that we're delivering and how that looks. So the monthly ones are really focused in on, as I showed earlier, the SLAs and some of the consumption details. How many tickets are we opening? What types of tickets are those? How do we make sure that those efforts are the most productive and valuable for you and for the students or parents that are calling? Then the other part of this too is really some of that ongoing review. So as we look at that, whether that's in the business reviews or whether that's in more oversight and periodic kind of reviews, to step back and say, hey, the way that we're doing support today looks like this. Well, if we make this minor modification, we'll align a little bit more to some standards that are more generally accepted out there, and it may introduce some efficiencies that everyone can benefit from. So those are kinds of things that we would do. Conversations about how to look at the customer experience for students and parents, as well as how we can establish a roadmap and start to look at things. An example of that might be, we start out and we don't necessarily introduce chat, but we say, you know what, after 3 months or 6 months, let's evaluate that and let's understand what chat could possibly do. Maybe there's an opportunity to survey students and parents to understand if they'd be interested in chat as a possibility. So those are some of the things that we can incorporate into the roadmaps. Okay. So I'll just walk you through a couple of things here, just as far as service benefits, and then we'll wrap up here. So one of the things, success by the numbers. So as I mentioned, obviously it's a unique time for everyone, and what we're seeing overall, and this was even prior to the COVID pandemic, is that we were seeing organizations that worked with us and started to expand their operating support from maybe a traditional business day to 24/7, as they start to communicate that out to their user base or to their customers, they're able to, they're now seeing use of that. So this is kind of an insightful graph that really helps to understand that work can be done 24/7, right? There's a lot of organizations today that are doing that work, and you're doing that support during more traditional school hours. Well, what happens in off hours or weekends? Well, they call and they leave a voicemail, and or they send an email. And well, what happens on Monday? That individual walks in, that team member walks in, and now there's a pile of voicemails or emails that need to be gone through right away Monday morning. Well, there's some lost productivity where if you were able to provide those end users with the access to the support that they needed at the time, right at the time, that then gets resolved. They're happy, they're more productive, and you're not losing that kind of catch-up effort that you have to do on that Monday morning or the next day. So that's what we're also seeing is that distribution of the workload across a greater number of hours really helps to provide some balance too. So currently we handle about 80,000 interactions on a monthly basis. So again, that incorporates voicemails, email, and chat across all three of those channels. First call resolution is obviously a big indicator for us. First call resolution or first level resolution, first contact resolution, there's a lot of different names for that. But ultimately what it means is that the first interaction that we have with a caller or with a user is resolved 95% of the time in that first interaction. There isn't a need for a follow-up. There isn't a need for additional engagement, so that we're trying to be as productive and effective as we can at getting them back on track for learning or instruction. Okay. So let's just walk through a couple of things here. There's obviously the benefit of covering the clock, and we've kind of talked about that and some of those engagement channels. There's ease of staffing turbulence, right? Obviously, in a situation in an economy right now, a lot of organizations are at a bare minimum staffing and don't really have the cycles or the budgetary funds to be able to bring a lot of staff on permanently. So this also provides some flexibility because they're able to consume that or we're able to provide those services in a consumption model. Avoiding firefighting, right? A lot of, again, because staff is limited, you've got a core group of people and you need them doing some of those core projects and key projects to be able to keep things progressing and improve upon service delivery. We're able to take some of that distraction, so to speak, of firefighting away and allow you to focus in on that. As I mentioned, with a consumption-based model, it helps to also manage your costs because you're not paying for a full-time employee that is focused on this. You're able to let them work on other things, or you're able to only pay for that service that you're using. And ultimately, as I mentioned, that enables you to use those limited resources that you have to really focus in on what are those things that are the most bang for the buck, so to speak, or the most strategically relevant to moving your plans for the future and going forward from there. Okay. So I hope that everyone found this to be helpful and provide some information, maybe some food for thought on different ways to approach supporting virtual learners, whether that's, again, students and parents, or whether that's teachers and faculty. We're here and we appreciate the time to speak with you today. And if you have questions, please feel free to reach out to myself, or you can also speak with your PDS account manager. You can also find some additional details on our website at pdsit.net. So with that, the other thing that I wanted to make everyone aware of is that we will be providing a link as a follow-up to this recording to today's session in case there's someone in your teams that you wanted to be able to attend that wasn't able to. So with that, I want to thank everyone for their time. John, is there any additional questions that have arisen?
No other questions. I just offer one other point is that, this is a time where everybody's worlds have been changed so much, and it's just adding so much stress to students, to the parents, of these students. And I think anything you can do to provide support in what's now a predominantly digitally delivered learning experience, it's just really important. So again, access and basic navigation are foundational to having success. If you don't have those things, it's just nothing else is going to work in delivering this instruction. So this is that lifeline to make sure that those things happen. You do it 24/7, knowing that people are doing these in non-traditional times. And also the multi-language capabilities, I think, is really important to stress here, just because,
right,
especially when you have the younger students and maybe some parents where there are some language barriers who have to be involved with trying to get this set up. Again, just to know that you have that lifeline that can support them through this. This is the time to give them that. So we're ready, and look forward to the next conversations.
No, that's a great point, John, and you're right. The language capabilities that we use, we do partner with a third-party organization that has a very diverse portfolio of languages that can be supported. And so what we do is we do bring in a third-party interpreter into those situations to help assist with that, to relieve some of the stress of multilingual needs. So great. Well, thank you, everyone. I really appreciate the time and look forward to hearing from you if you have any additional questions.
Thanks, Craig.
Thank you.